All right, welcome to Walk Drop.
Once again.
Let's get right into it. So today, Simon talked about the broth, the shentang, the basic soup broth. So what we're doing here is the base of this broth is mineral water. So mineral water comes from deep within the earth, comes from crevices and areas in the earth that are high in mineral content that get into the water. This makes the water very cooling and alkalizing, right? So alkalizing water tends to cool inflammation. Alkalizing food tends to cool heat in the body. So the minerals make water in general has an affinity for the kidneys, but deep earth minerals strengthen that because as they are sort of like the jing or the essence of the earth, they have an affinity and an attraction to the essence of our bodies, which are based on the essence of earth. So that would be an association with the kidneys, right? We're putting into that things like ginger, right? Shengjiang, which is very warm. It enters the channels in the stomach and the spleen, the large intestine and the lung, and the heart, right? So it's really interesting because it enters both the earth, like the channels of earth, the channels of metal, but then if you swap it around, lung and spleen are tai-yin, and large intestine and stomach are yang-ming, right? So it helps to strengthen the ability of the body to metabolize and to loosen and warm respiration. It also helps the ability to harmonize digestion, to move things through the bowels, right? It also helps to generate fluids. It helps to invigorate blood and move stasis of blood. So it can even move stasis of blood in the chest as it enters the heart channel. It can move stasis of blood in the intestines. We use this a lot in various formulas and whatnot in Chinese medicine for injuries or cold that's invaded the body that's caused stasis. Leek is another one that we've added here. So leek or spring onion is called datsong because it's rather big, right? Song is like scallion, it's very thin, and datsong, leek, is much bigger. So it's a member of the allium family. So allium family plants tend to enter the lungs. They also enter the liver, right? And they enter the stomach and the spleen channels. As an allium family plant, it's very warming, and it helps through its warming nature to induce the lungs to be able to diffuse its fluids and its chi to the surface to induce sweating. This is really useful when you have an external invasion of cold, wind, heat even, to help sweat this stuff out. So it's really effective for that. So allium plants are really warm and invigorating, and they can warm and invigorate and move blood and chi. So it's really, really good for that. Also, if you have somebody who tends to be rather dehydrated, you can add the roots of the leek to the broth. We didn't see it here today, but you can do that. You would want to soak it in water, and then the roots being in the earth would then help to nourish the fluids, which would help to then push the broth of the soup, that substance, that liquid, into generating more fluids for the body. You just want to soak and clean the roots first, and you would use the roots together with the stem of the leaf. And that would generate yin fluids that then your body could sweat out if you are sweating, trying to sweat some sort of sickness out of your body. The other vegetable we used is called chinsai. So chinsai is celery. And we use the leaf, right? So celery leaves are bitter and sweet and cooling. They tend to enter the channels of the bladder and the kidney and the liver, right? And so what happens is, being cooling, they clear and clearing of dampness, they help to move these fluids out of the body from their bitterness. They can deal with a lot of damp heat as it comes in the summertime and tends to invade, and you feel very heavy and sticky, and you might get like itching and rashes. It helps to help with that. As a leaf, we're using the leaves, they tend to deal with the exterior of the body the most. So they help to clear this heat on the exterior of the body and this dampness from swellings and whatnot. So very good for increasing fluid movement and metabolism in the exterior of the body. Then we have chicken, right? We're using chicken carcass, so jike. So this idea of chicken enters the channels of the stomach and the spleen, but it also helps, in this case, the kidneys. So if you think about chickens, they eat grains, they eat seeds, they eat an abundant diet. The more abundant, the better, as long as it's free range and organic, and they're living naturally. Grains tend to have an affinity. Wheat, corn, millet, rice tend to have an affinity for the stomach and the spleen, right? So they'll help to strengthen the muscles, help to warm the muscles, the joints, things like that, help to strengthen digestion. If the chicken is eating seeds, it also has an affinity that the chicken itself, when eaten, will have an affinity through the stomach, digesting the chicken, to turn around and use some of that energy and those resources to strengthen the kidneys, right? So the more seeds they eat, the more affinity they'll have for the kidneys. Also, we're using the neck and the carcass, which are bones, right? So that's going to have an affinity for the kidneys because bones are under the auspices of the kidneys, and that cartilage and that association of the joint in Chinese medicine is something that's under the auspices or control of the kidneys, so strengthening the kidneys, right? The other meat we use is juro, right? Is pork, right? Or sometimes in this case, that belly is called wuharo. So pork is very yin nourishing. It's very, it nourishes qi, it nourishes blood. It's sweet and salty, and it enters the channels of the stomach and spleen, as well as the liver. Pork is very, very good for nourishing the flesh of the body. So people who are convalescing, people who have wasted away, they need to put on more weight. Pork is very, very effective for that. It's one of the most effective land animal meats for that. Just a little bit of pork is all you need even to stimulate the stomach when it hasn't eaten in a while, to be able to digest. So it'll strengthen the stomach to be able to digest more food for people whose stomach just seems very weak and it can't digest food after having long-term sickness. You see this a lot in people who have been sick for a very long time with various illnesses, and they're just not hungry. This is an appetite stimulator. Very small pieces or a broth made of pork, as we see here. Now, take into consideration with this broth, we are boiling this. It's called zhu, right? Zhu in Chinese, to boil. So boiling and steaming is usually done with water. So this is water. Water is associated with the kidneys and the ideas of the five element or the wuxing, right? So this idea of being associated with water will mean that you're actually, whatever you're cooking in it, makes all of those ingredients even more likely to affect the kidneys, which is good because we're trying to build things up from a base, right? We're trying to give you a base for this, and the kidneys are the base for the body in Chinese medicine. Now, the longer you steam or boil something, the more of that essence, that jing, that essence from the herb or the bone that you're pulling out of it into the broth. So that's really, really important. If you're boiling something, it has a tendency to cool down more warm or hot things and warm up more cool things to bring them to kind of a medium, a middle level. That's really, really good for people who are convalescing or people who are weak or want to slowly strengthen the body in ways because they can't take things that are too cooling. It will cool the digestion too much. They'll have too many problems digesting, and they'll tend to get cramps or whatnot in the stomach, or they won't be able to digest it. Things like salads and whatnot can sometimes be very difficult for people to digest. They won't be able to get enough nutrients from it. Instead, boiling or stews like this, these broths, they'll break down the nutrients to very easily digestible quantities. They'll be cooling things that are excessively hot so that they don't overstimulate the body and wear the person out. So this is the point of the broth today. So we're taking this broth and we're putting it just below a boil, right? Like the lowest simmer possible. And that allows to pull more things out, because there can be something said for overboiling something where it just hardens, right? And it kind of breaks things down into all these pieces. We want a clear, consistent broth. That's the idea here. We don't want it a bunch of million little pieces in this broth, because you're going to be using it for other things. So that's why we're bringing it down to that level, and that kind of slow boil, still over an hour, even though you're not seeing it a rolling boil, is still a boil in this case.
You see, when you pour it through, you've got lovely, clear, clean stock.
All right, guys, I wish you luck in your first broth. This is going to be really good. Please give us plenty of questions and comments down in the question and comment section, and we'll get back to you. Have a great time and be well, guys.